Hey folks, Professor Finn here, and today we're going to be looking at Pathology and Microbiology for Mortuary Science students by Mullins. Chapter 28, the final chapter in this textbook. Let's go ahead and get the screen shared and get on with it. Today we'll be talking about diseases of the fungi and protozoa. Let's get the pen ready. So fungi, groups of filamentous unicellular and multicellular organisms. They lack chlorophyll, they're usually spore-bearing, and some are toxic to humans. Some are also very fun to humans. Fungi differ substantially from bacteria and viruses. Fungi are eukaryotic cells containing a nucleus. Bacteria viruses are prokaryotic. They differ from plants. Fungi do not contain chlorophyll, so they cannot photosynthesize, and they are saprophytic, which means they grow on decomposing matter. There are three primary categories of fungi: yeasts, molds, and dimorphic fungi. So yeasts are typically encapsulated and unicellular. Molds are filamentous and multicellular, and the dimorphic alternate back and forth between unicellular and multicellular. They reproduce sexually or asexually, usually by budding or spore formation. And the first group we're going to be looking at are dermatomycoses. Dermatophytes are fungi that affect the integumentary system. Dermato means skin. They grow in the keratin of skin, hair, and nails, and infections are called tineias or ringworms. So the diseases that they typically cause are Tinea capitis, Tinea cruris, Tinea pedis, and they are typically chronic. They recur frequently, especially those that affect nail beds. So Tinea capitis is ringworm of the cap, ringworm of the head, begins as an infection of the hair and spreads to the scalp. Tinea cruris, which is ringworm of the groin, also known as jock itch. And Tinea pedis, which is the fungal infection of the foot, also known as athlete's foot. They are caused by three general brands of fungi: Cophyton, Microsporum, and Epidermophyton. First up, we have coccidomycoses, which is a respiratory disease caused by Coccidioides immitis. It is also known as Posada Wernicke disease, coccidioidal granuloma, valley fever, desert rheumatism, valley bumps, and California disease, because why can't anything ever be easy? Spores can be found in dry alkaline soils, and they are one of the most virulent mycotic pathogens in the world for humans. Only a few spores lead to infection, and windblow spores and just going through the area where the disease is endemic can lead to an infection. Wrong place, wrong time. Less than 40% of those infected display symptoms, and they can be fatal. Filipinos and African Americans are the highest risk of systemic infection. Men are more likely to contract than women. And compromised immune system can lead to severe pulmonary disease. What are some symptoms? Angina, fever, coughing, anorexia, headache, and weight loss that lasts more than 6+ weeks. At the secondary stage, untreated, this can lead to nodule formation, pulmonary disease, and meningeal complications. Next up, we have histoplasmosis, which is a fungal infection of the respiratory system, also known as reticuloendothelial cytomycosis, cave disease, spelunker's disease, also known as Darling's disease. Caused by Histoplasma capsulatum, the U.S. cases are highest in the states of Ohio, Missouri, and the Mississippi Delta. It is found in the bodies of bats and the fecal matter of birds, so resist the urge to go play with bird poop. It is acquired from airborne spores, such as birds' nests in air systems. Infected host is usually asymptomatic, cannot be spread from person to person, and the immunocompromised individual can develop fatal chronic obstructive pulmonary disease once it reaches the systemic level. Next up, we have candidiasis, caused by Candida albicans. Normal flora of the mucous membranes of the body generally prevent the growth of this fungus. Infants' suppressed immune system can lead to the outbreak. Infants will typically develop thrush or a white overgrowth of the tongue. Immunocompromised individuals can develop a fatal infection in the esophagus and respiratory system. This also causes yeast infections in women. Excessive douching can kill the normal flora of the vagina. Diabetics and obese individuals are also at risk. It is the fourth most common cause of nosocomial bloodstream infections in the United States. 40% of fatal incidents once it reaches the systemic level. Fungal meningitis, most commonly caused by Cryptococcus neoformans. Very rare. It's an encapsulated yeast cell present in cerebrospinal fluid. During autopsy, a mucus-like coverage appears on the surface of the brain, and microscopic flask-shaped cavities are present in the brain, which cause dementia. Fungal infections of the central nervous system are hard to treat. 12% of infections are fatal. This is also known as cryptococcal meningitis and cryptococcosis. This may develop a secondary infection due to Histoplasma capsulatum, coccidosis immitis, or aspergillus, usually chronic but may appear acutely and mimic bacterial meningitis. People at risk are infants with histoplasmosis, IV drug abusers, and immunocompromised persons. Symptoms of fungal meningitis include headache, low-grade fever, malaise, respiratory failure, deteriorating mental status, and stiff neck. Aspergillosis, caused by Aspergillus fumigatus or Aspergillus flavus, or Aspergillus glaucus or Aspergillus niger. A flavus is found in corn, peanuts, and grains. A glaucus or blue mold is found on dried fruit. And Aspergillus niger, black mold, is found in auditory meatus. It's found in your ears. Commonly found among gardeners and farmers, spores are spread through ingestion or inhalation and can be fatal if it forms lesions in the brain. Symptoms of this disease include lesions in the bronchi, lungs, oral canal, skin, eyes, nose, or urethra. Nodules can form in the kidney, lungs, or liver. At risk are people with prolonged blood-related cancers, blood-related stem cell transplants, organ transplants, high-dose corticosteroids for chronic inflammation, and immunosuppressed individuals. And this can begin as an invasive pulmonary infection. Next up is pneumocystic pneumonia, caused by Pneumocystis carinii, first believed to be a yeast, then a protozoa, now a fungus, also known as Pneumocystis jirovecii. It is primarily opportunistic. Disease can be abbreviated to PCP, and this is not the fun PCP. Virulence against antimicrobial agents, so it is drug resistant. Early detection and treatment result in prevention of symptoms, which can be fatal. It is widespread among and persisting in the lungs of dogs, cats, horses, and rodents. At risk are, once again, immunosuppressed or HIV-infected individuals, immunocompromised individuals, and malnourished individuals. This appeared in World War II among infants and children in orphanages. Mode of transmission to humans is unclear. Most human carriers are asymptomatic. It is unknown if animals infect us or vice versa, and it is thought to be airborne. What are some symptoms of this? Fever, cough, shortness of breath, dusky coloration on skin and mucous membranes due to loss of oxygen, and acute respiratory failure by filling the alveoli of the lungs with inflammatory fluid as a response to infection. And it's usually fatal due to the progressive failure of your organs, and it was once the leading cause of death in AIDS-infected persons. Deep breath. We are now on to protozoa. These are from the kingdom Protista, one-celled eukaryotes, and they may be colonial. They may have various modes of motility. They lack a cell wall, but may have rigid forms depending on their place in their life cycle. Most are free-living organisms with no pathological consequences, and there are the others that absolutely overachieve for their more peaceful counterparts. There are more protozoa in the world than any other organism and play a role in consuming bacteria and other microorganisms. First up, we have amoebiasis, caused by Entamoeba histolytica, and this is known as amoebic dysentery. It is found in food and water and then spreads through the fecal-oral route to humans. Stomach acid destroys the vegetative cells but does not affect the cysts that they form. They then enter the intestine, are digested, Then the vegetative cells are released into the system and multiply in the epithelium of the colon. Symptoms of amoebiasis are bloody fecal matter and mucus. It can be fatal. You may have, and symptoms of this disease include chronic mild diarrhea that lasts for months or years. Just going to go out a limb here and say that if you have chronic diarrhea that is lasting months or years, you may want to contact your general practitioner. Ulcerative colitis, which may lead later on to peritonitis, and acute fatal dysentery. We now have malaria caused by Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium ovale, and Plasmodium malariae, spread by the Anopheles mosquito. Pathogen is carried in the saliva and transmits through bite into host. In 30 minutes, it invades liver cells and multiplies. It then penetrates the blood cells and multiplies again. Cells burst, causes chills and fever because your blood is going down. You get an infection, and your life becomes miserable. Symptoms of this disease include fever and chills, anemia, and hypertrophy of the liver and spleen. Symptoms alternate with asymptomatic periods. It can be fatal. Treated with quinine, 300 to 500 million are infected annually. We have 3 million deaths as a result of this disease. Next up, we have toxoplasmosis caused by Toxoplasma gondii, usually asymptomatic. Mode of transmission is usually ingestion of contaminated water or food, undercooked meats. The most common modes of transmission is handling of contaminated cat feces, and the cat feces are only contagious for a few weeks after initial infection. Symptoms of toxoplasmosis include mild flu-like symptoms, swollen lymph glands, muscle aches and pains, and these can last several days to weeks. Can form in tissue cysts in the body, but commonly found in the skeletal muscle, myocardium, and the brain. At risk are individuals who are immunosuppressed, immunocompromised, organ transplants, and infants. This can cause severe mental retardation and other mental physical problems. The fetus may have convulsions, retardation, blindness, and death. Obviously, if it messes with your melon, that causes severe problems. Can cause severe damage to eyes and brain and can be fatal. We now have African sleeping sickness, aka trypanosomiasis, also known as sleeping sickness. Its biological vector is the tsetse fly, and there are two types, East African sleeping disease and West African sleeping disease. East African sleeping disease is caused by Trypanosoma brucei rhodesiensis. Its bite from the fly is painful and usually results in a red sore. Symptoms include severe headaches, irritability, extreme fatigue, swollen lymph nodes, aching muscles and joints, and rash. The long-term progressive symptoms are confusion, personality changes, slurred speech, seizures, and difficulty walking and talking. If left untreated, it is fatal and death occurs in several weeks or months. West African sleeping disease is caused by Trypanosoma brucei gambiensis. It is known as Gambian sleeping sickness, and its symptoms are fever, rash, swelling around the eyes and hands, severe headache, extreme fatigue, aching muscles and joints, and swelling of the lymph nodes on the back of the neck, also known as Winterbottom's signs. Long-term, we have weight loss, personality changes, irritability, loss of concentration, confusion, slurred speech, seizures, difficulty walking and talking, sleeping for long periods during the day, and insomnia at night. And if left untreated, death occurs in several months to years. Giardiasis, caused by Giardia lamblia, most common identified waterborne illness in the United States, found both in natural and chlorinated water sources, and is transmitted by the fecal-oral route or by ingestion of contaminated water. Can also be contracted through diaper changes at care facilities as well as anal intercourse. Symptoms develop 6 to 20 days after infection and include indigestion, gas, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, fatigue, and weight loss. Usually self-resolving in about 4 weeks, but can be chronic, can be asymptomatic and symptomatic in hosts. A single stool can contain 300 million cysts. Infection only requires 10 cysts. In cold water, viability can be up to 2 months, and chlorination is ineffective. Cryptosporidiosis, caused by Cryptosporidium parvum. It is also known as traveler's diarrhea. The mode of transmission, as you can imagine, is the oral fecal route and contaminated food and water. Epidemics have occurred due to drinking water, swimming pools, water slides, zoo fountains, daycare centers, unpasteurized apple juice, and miscellaneous foods. I would be interested to know what the miscellaneous foods are, because if it's Hot Pockets, that's going to kill an entire generation. It is more resistant to chlorine than Giardia lamblia. Incubation period lasts 4 to 10 days. Symptoms last 10 to 14 days. Symptoms of this of cryptosporidiosis include fever, loss of appetite, nausea, cramping abdominal pain, and profuse water diarrhea. So take your pick, this or malaria. At risk, we have immunosuppressed individuals such as the elderly, children, cancer patients, organ transplant, and those suffering from acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Folks, this concludes our lecture on pathology microbiology. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next video.